The people are fed up being told what to do, being fed, particularly in America, with information that pretends to support the economy is growing greatly, whereas in effect, for some time, the economy has been weak. Households know it because when they go to do their weekly shopping, prices are not falling, they're rising.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of the Black Swan Capitalist YouTube channel. We're honored to have a very special guest, Simon Hunt, with over 40 years of experience in global economics, geopolitics, and key industries like copper and precious metals. And ladies and gentlemen, you can find Simon Hunt at simon-hunt.com. And I'll put the links in the description below.
Good evening, and thank you for having me on your show.
It's an absolute pleasure, and I really thank you again for joining me on short notice. How's everything in Dubai? I was personally thinking about moving out there next year.
I love the place. It's a real multinational city. You have people from all over the world. There is no problems. People get on with their jobs. There's no argument. Everything works. It's an autocratic government, but it's a very pragmatic one. It's 100% safe. Friends that have brought up their 3 girls here never had a qualm of them walking to and from school. You can live a high life or you can live a medium or low life. It's up to you.
Yeah, I grew up there.
Now I'm very happy I'm here, and I'm happy, extremely happy, that I'm no longer in the UK. Well, I can tell you why.
Yeah.
From friends who should know, England is on the path to having the military patrolling the streets, and probably within 2 years, a national government.
It's really scary.
I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. We see all of Europe actually breaking down. And
correct.
Yeah, it's very scary. This is exactly what it's like to see totalitarianism become a real thing. If we can actually give our audience an unfiltered view of what's really happening now in the region of the Middle East, we hear about rising conflicts in Israel. There's the challenge to the dollar's dominance. And it seems like a lot of this that we're seeing unfold really is linked to what is, I believe, a currency war.
Where do we start? Let's start from the basic premise. Israel as a sovereign state is at risk for its survival. It has its war with Hamas in Gaza. There is a peace proposal, not a deal, which probably will not go through. One very good reason. Why should Hamas sign it when Israel assassinated their lead negotiator for these peace proposals? What we will most likely see is, again, as Israel is fighting for its survival, we will probably see within a month or two a blitz, Israel blitzing Lebanon and Syria in their attempt to destroy Hezbollah. That has been made worse by the fact that the government of Lebanon has now brought Hezbollah into its government military. So it's not just a war against Hezbollah, but a war against the government of Lebanon. If they are intent, which they are, of destroying Hezbollah, then they must also attack Syria. The risk then is that an attack, a serious attack, not just the odd one, but a serious attack on Syria will bring Iran and Russia into the equation. Then if we look at what's going on in Iran, Israel assassinated Hamas's leading negotiator, only a few hundred meters from the presidential palace in Tehran. The fact that Iran has not yet retaliated is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of prudence as Iran makes full preparations for any attack that Israel, stroke America, stroke the UK, may deem necessary. Preparations have included mining the Straits of Hormuz with explosives. So it's just the touch of a switch can shut the straits down. Iran is receiving regular plane loads and ship loads of sophisticated electronic and military equipment, including S-400s.
Yeah.
From what we hear, Iran has made it clear to America that should there be an attack on Iran, that Iran will attack all of America's military bases in the Gulf.
Yep.
The question is, when and how will Iran retaliate? Is probably going to be coordinated by Putin in Moscow. Because Putin is going to retaliate against Ukraine stroke NATO for their invasion of Russian territory in the Kursk Oblast. It is proven that the troops that entered include troops or special forces from the US, from the UK, from Poland, and others. Moreover, the Ukrainian invasion included military equipment and tanks, etc., from NATO countries. And obviously, from American, by the use of American satellite imagery.
Right.
What has compounded the situation was that last night, a bevy of drones from Ukraine on their way to Moscow were shot down by Russia.
Wow.
In de facto, this is a war against Russia.
That's right. proxy. It's not a proxy war anymore. It's getting
No,
to the
it's not
point
a
where,
proxy war
yeah,
anymore.
that's what Ukraine was, I think, and what happened
Yeah,
even in the
yeah,
Middle
yeah,
East.
yeah.
Right.
It's interesting that Prime Minister Modi of India is on his way to Poland and then to Kiev, having recently been in Moscow talking with Putin.
Hmm.
This is obviously a last chance for a sensible peace negotiation to be agreed to begin. It will probably fail because NATO, i.e., America, does not want negotiation.
Yep.
They want Russia into a war.
Yeah.
If we go back, at least since 1991, Washington has been planning to dismember Russia to gain control of its natural resources, which are huge.
That's right.
And if you go back in history, there was the famous Halford Mackinder's quote in 1904, "He who controls the heartland, which is Central Asia, controls the world." So it is Russia sitting there. So I think it's very likely that before the end of September, we are going to see a real escalation of war between NATO, i.e., America, and Russia, which comes into the political situation in America.
That's right.
Because whether you call them the deep state or the neocons or the money that is behind them who really control the shots, the last thing they want to see is Trump winning the election. Because should Trump win the election, then all their decades of planning
Right.
will be defeated.
Wow.
Either by hook or by crook, the neocons will remain in office, either because they somehow win an election or else because an election won't take place because there is a war.
Yep.
And if what I read somewhere today, the rumor is true, that by the end of the Democrat convention, Biden will resign for health reasons, and thus Harris becomes president. Which makes, if that does happen, and it's just a rumor I happen to read,
Yeah.
but I've been thinking about it for some time.
I've been speculating it too.
Yeah. So if that happens, then if there is no election, you have the right from the neocons' point of view, all the powerful people behind them, that the right guy is in office.
Right. It's
So
incredible.
just to make things worse, war will occur at a time when America's economy is in recession, when Europe's economy having had a very modest recovery, is sinking back into recession. When Japan's economy, despite the bullish talk, is actually sitting on a cliff's edge, and when China's focus is on stabilizing its economy and building what I call Fortress China, so that they can survive any political or war scenario outside their boundaries.
Okay. Well, this just confirms that the world is absolutely in a state of flux. And I think the changes that we're witnessing, they're not just political, obviously. I think these are deeply rooted in like a long-standing struggle between globalist and nationalist ideologies.
Well,
Mhm.
it's also, as you alluded to earlier, it's the start of a social revolution.
That's right.
The people are fed up being told what to do, being fed, particularly in America, with information that pretends to support the economy is growing greatly, whereas in effect, for some time, the economy has been weak. Households know it, because when they go to do their weekly shopping, prices are not falling, they're rising.
That's right.
And in fact, I keep going back to our friend John Williams of Shadow Government Statistics, who actually takes the workings of the CPI back to where they were before Arthur Burns in the 1970s started muddling around with them, as he did not want to raise interest rates. So the real inflation that John comes out with now, I forget the exact figure, but for June, it was around 11%. That's what households see. That's why they're voting. And in Europe, it's always the peasants who begin revolutions. That's the history of Europe.
Yeah.
And we've been having the farmers rebelling against Brussels, telling them how they should work their lands.
Farmers.
Yep. Yep.
I saw that. It's very tragic. They're trying to control the food supply.
Yep. For obvious reasons.
Oh, of course.
Our technical associate with whom I've worked for, 25, 30 years, and normally pretty successfully, we're looking for global equity markets between now and early next year to fall by around 30%. It's not just equity markets, it's base metal markets. And what the gold price is doing, it's signaling how much tension there is in the world.
Yeah. That's why it hit 2,500 first time.
Yeah. Yeah.
We were saying this a while ago as well. I'm sure you guys were doing the same. But gold is only going to ride higher, and like you said, it signals how much pressure is on the system. And gold is rising on the dollar's decline.
Talking of gold, what's very interesting, not generally recognized, is that Chinese citizens and institutions own north of 25,000 tons of physical gold. And that sometime in the last 4 to 6 months, China's central bank put in place a platform whereby households can buy gold directly, physical gold directly from the Shanghai Gold Exchange, and even on an installment basis. So you can bet that if there is a renewed run on the Chinese currency, the government will announce our currency is backed by the gold which our citizens own, and they will give out the figure around 25,000 tons.
I know the BRICS meeting is in October. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, correct.
What are your thoughts on the US elections? Personally, I see the United States as a failing empire burdened by propaganda and debt. And it's very disheartening to say, but I've never seen a country more dominated by propaganda, artificial intelligence, cell phones, convenience, without being overly negative.
The power behind the throne will do everything and anything to stop Trump getting into the White House.
The military industrial complex.
Well, that's what it's all about. So I've said, it's very likely in the UK that we're going to have a national government, and who will call the shots? If you've got the military on the streets, it's probably going to be the generals. That's how rotten the UK underbelly has become.
Yeah.
And it's probably not much different in other European countries. And it's either got that way or is getting that way in America. I mean, if by any chance Trump did get into the White House, I think he would do a huge cleanup job. A lot of people are suggesting that if Trump gets in, that RFK will become the Attorney General.
Right.
Then you'd have real cleanup. That's why everything is going to be done to stop him getting in.
You don't think there's like a predetermined solution for all of this? Like this has been planned out in advance? I mean, these guys are very smart. They got billions back. Yeah,
Sure. Yeah, first of all, let me throw in a dart,
please.
which is I have reservations on whether Powell is going to cut interest rates in September.
Okay.
I think Powell's legacy that he wants is to break down the shadow banking system by completing Basel III, and really what he needs to see are more pips squeaking within the shadow banking sector. Now, obviously, the big players in the shadow banking sector don't want those pips to squeak anymore. So Powell is under enormous pressure, not just from those guys, but from SMEs, from households, from everybody. But I have a sneak feeling that he's going after his legacy. And thus, my own personal bet, and nothing more than that, so please don't take it as a forecast, is that it's only 50-50 that Powell will cut rates in September. If that happens, then you're going to see a new buying opportunity for gold. Let's now get on to the bigger question, BRICS. I think there has been a mega change in the last couple of weeks. Saudi Arabia was invited to join BRICS, verbally accepted, but has never signed. Putin has doubts on Saudi being a member of BRICS,
Interesting.
as they will quite likely play both sides,
Yeah,
America and BRICS.
that's a very complex issue there.
So, and that is despite Russia and Saudi having close relations on oil. If I'm right in that assumption, it has other ramifications, such as the deal that China brokered between Iran and Saudi Arabia. So, what you are seeing, potentially seeing, is a fracturing of what was going to be a knitting of relationships between all the Gulf countries. So America has played a very big hand in breaking that down.
You think this is going to be resolved in the near term, or
No,
see?
I don't think so. I think Putin has made a decision.
As you know, I'm deeply involved in the digital asset space, and I closely follow the trends in the blockchain technology and its adoption by central banks and financial institutions. Now, I'm going to try to tie this into what we're discussing. Even Dubai's central bank has partnered with Ripple. Many countries in the BRICS nations and here in the United States, over 1,700 banks with non-disclosure agreements with Ripple. It's a fintech company that leverages the XRP I talked to you about. Now, the XRP is designed for cross-border payment settlements. And like I said in the beginning, I really believe behind all of this, there's a real currency war at play here. So it's a global shift from a failing empire to something that could be. And I'm aware of how the central banks are gearing up to use this blockchain, including the BRICS nations' currency system. 150 countries have joined the BRICS blockchain currency initiative. Interestingly, all of these nations are working with Ripple, including, again, the US. I know I'm repeating myself, but XRP is designed to function as a global reserve currency settlement mechanism, potentially to replace the dollar's functionality, but still be able to coexist with it. My point, though, is that it's very possible that this could be this technology that's being put into place could be the solution to avoiding all-out war, because this is a currency war. If they can coexist with each other using these technologies, it's very possible that XRP could even actually be the solution to putting an end to this currency war, leveling the playing field for all governments. But of course, it would take a miracle to get us there. And I think that's the stage that's being set.
Well, I would say you need the crisis first.
Of course.
It's only in the crisis that something new will emerge.
That's right. But the
So
stage is being set.
I think you have the war first.
Of course. Yeah. That's what I've been sharing with my audiences. That's why we even called this company Black Swan Capitalists. We capitalize after the bad news. None of us
I don't
want
think
that.
there will be a nuclear war.
Maybe a nuclear scare.
Nuclear scares, more likely.
Yeah.
Russia has prepared for it. They have or are building prefab hospitals across the country. They've got, through the metro system and others, underground bunkers, probably that can accommodate somewhere between 40 to 60 million people.
It's incredible. And in the US, we're not doing anything to protect our people.
I think through hotlines that Russia and America will say to each other, or have said to each other, if we have war, it's not going to be nuclear.
Cyber, possibly.
A cyber, I think, is very, very likely. I think it's perfectly possible that Russia could create a cyber attack somewhere. It's perfectly possible, too, that America will launch its own cyber attack in America.
Yep, and point the finger.
What was the name of the cyber strike?
Yeah,
That was
CrowdStrike. Sorry,
CrowdStrike. That's right.
Cyber strike.
CrowdStrike was a dress rehearsal.
Yeah.
Where are the weaknesses? CrowdStrike, you go into its history, long history with American intelligence services.
Yep, and Israeli Mossad.
Probably.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy. Yeah, who knows? And Jim Rickards actually talked about this in his book where, well, he didn't mention cyber, but talked about a lockup in the financial system. And it's very possible that we could see a cyber threat on our financial infrastructure. And that could create a situation where they can either point the finger at somebody else to go to war.
Absolutely.
Right.
I mean, if the US intelligence services do, of course, it'll be Russia that did it.
Yeah.
Always Russia is something.
Always Russia. Yeah. This is what Martin Armstrong talked to me about recently. He came on the show and he mentioned how the neocons, that's what he calls them, have always had a vendetta against Russia, and that they've consistently and strategically tried to maneuver their way even through the Middle East to get to Russia and cut off supplies to them. And I don't understand why they have so much beef with Russia unless it's because they are against. Russia is it's a country that's very committed to their religion. And if you look at what's happening in the States, I'm talking about society now. In the US, you see the rise of Satanism. Like, it's being
pathetic.
It's disgusting. It's pathetic. Indoctrinating our youth. And Russian President Putin actually talked about this at one of his speeches, that America, he said, and I quote, is run by pedophiles and Satanists. That's what he said. Those were
if you go to Russia, you understand the depth of their religion.
Of course. And it's a very beautiful thing. Let's face the facts. Israel, personally, I've done research on this for a very long time. Israel is nothing more than another stronghold for the United States military-industrial complex, Mossad alliance in the Middle East, to push a war on the Muslim religion, and not just the Muslim religion, but all other religions. That's because they will not bend the knee to a one-world government corporate agenda. That's really what it comes down to. You mentioned that the new currency in time eventually would be a basket of commodities backed by 20 different odd commodities. And I'd love for you to possibly expand on that again for our new audiences, because what we're seeing is countries, governments, central banks aggressively buying up gold. At the same time, this intersects with the idea of leveraging these blockchain systems for a system that's backed by these commodities, which makes a lot more sense. But I'm just trying to connect the dots here. So I'd appreciate if you could just give us some deeper insight on the concept.
First of all, in our view, the super cycle does not start until the early 2030s.
Oh, wow. Okay. I'm way off.
One very simple reason, that starting in end 2026 or early 2027, we will have rolling recessions, if not depression. What does that do to commodities? They collapse. It's only when we come out of that, and it'll be a debt-free world because debt will have been washed out, that global GDP will go back to the average that the world has experienced since 1900, that is around 4% a year, which is great news for metal prices. That's when you get into the real super cycle. Coming back to currencies, what I'm sure BRICS is planning is a currency that will be backed 40% by gold and 60% by the value of members' currencies, which will all be linked into gold. I think the raw material side, excluding gold, is a different story. It's a story that if you control the output, you control the world.
That's right.
And you can control the prices. I keep quoting the simple example. A $1980 today is worth 25 cents. Commodity prices are linked to the dollar. So if you are a producer, your profits have been completely illusionary. They've just kept pace with inflation. So I think that when we get into this new world, metal prices, excluding gold, will be priced in a different currency. It might be, it'll probably be the BRICS currency, backed by gold.
Yeah.
Where you will then have real profits coming in. So I see it, and the two economists that have put forward this paper that will be discussed at the BRICS summit in October, one being Chinese, the other being Russian, both emphasize that it is blockchain.
Yeah.
Blockchain is the technology that will bind it all together.
That's correct. Yeah, that's where I can jump in the conversation real fast. It's the technologies. See, many people don't understand is that blockchain allows us to fractionalize these commodities as well and tokenize them. And that's one of the articles I put up here just a moment ago, how central banks were getting ready to tokenize all assets. Then you, of course, have your narrative with BlackRock and put it on the blockchain, but it has to be all linked to a scalable, immutable, safe, secure, cheap, neutral. So green goes kind of with the green agenda, blockchain protocol out there. And that's what really Ripple is doing and the fintech company. And they're leveraging the digital asset XRP.
Where I think it gets interrupted is war.
Of course, yes. It's very possible that war is going to accelerate that.
It will accelerate it afterwards,
Yes.
not during the war, because you're not going to get people working together.
Yeah, there won't be business. And I think that's why I talked to you about this earlier before we hopped on record. Keep telling people to expect the volatility because global debt is rising. At the same time, the global economy is contracting.
Absolutely.
Even though, yeah, and you mentioned this too, that they're faking the data more in the West than they are in other countries. Yeah. So they're really hiding something. And I think what this indicates to someone like me and yourself is how close we might be to the system really locking up because the global economy is really slowing down. And that means war. It does.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
And then the solution comes afterwards.
Correct.
So the current state of credit card spending and delinquencies for most Americans is very alarming. It's a very deep systemic issue within our financial and political system. And my question is, as inflation continues to rise and more people are forced to rely on credit cards to meet the basic necessities for survival, leading to an escalation of more debt that is increasingly unsustainable. How can Americans protect themselves here in this never-ending debt trap?
That's a very difficult question to answer, but it is the right question to put forward. My view is that you should have enough cash, not in the bank, to pay for your daily necessities for as long as you can afford to do that. That you should secure your wealth by holding gold, physical, and that you should have at least 3 months food supply in your home. And you should ensure that you have water supply. That's the principle that I look for. And my friends, many of my friends are actually doing it.
Same here.
Physically in America, buying their own generating sets, which need not be expensive, from which you can run your household electricity, your fridges, aircon, etc. And they're generally powered by folding solar panels. And that you see that you have a well-stocked food supply.
It's really good advice. I tell the audience the same thing. I spend a lot of money on securing water, more than anything. And gold, of course. And I keep telling people as debt escalates and more pressure is put on the system, gold will continue to rise. So it's one way to safely secure the money you've worked so hard for. Because here in the West, the situation is really accelerating. Inflation, people are losing purchasing power faster than they can earn the money. And by the time they get the money in their pockets, the price of groceries and goods and services is a lot higher. And now they don't have money to invest and participate in what I believe is still the early stages before war of one of the greatest wealth transfers in human history. If all assets are being tokenized on the blockchain, you're going to see a massive amount of wealth shift from one set of assets to another.
Yeah, dead right.
One more thing, if we can, is China. I know China owns a lot of our debt. Is there any threat from that to the US? And what does that really mean? Does that mean that they have a stronghold over us here in the West?
I was told several years ago, maybe 10 years ago, that China had hedged all its treasury bills, notes, etc., with the American banks through the derivative market. In the meantime, they are selling down their US debt and
So is the West buying it?
buying up Asian currencies and physical assets.
Supposedly that there will be a following attack in the US. And right at that moment, all the BRICS countries and probably other nations will start dumping the dollar at the same time to basically.
I think that's, well, let's put it this way.
Yeah,
I
it's a
don't know
wild.
how it happens, and maybe how it happens is what you've just described. But by 2028, the dollar index will be half today's value.
Okay, so 2025, how do you see the year going from here?
Well, on the proviso that global war has not broken out, then what we see happening is that early next year, the Fed, other global central banks, and governments will throw all the liquidity into the system that they can muster to prevent a systemic collapse, and that we will have the last gasp, as it were, of an inflation-driven recovery, modest in size, but highly inflationary, dollar collapsing, equity markets responding upwards, probably doubling in value from their low points at the end of this year. Likewise, base metal prices. Until and with the rise of inflation, where we will see a repeat, if not worse, of what was experienced in 1981, when from memory, US CPI was something like 15%, and global inflation was well into double figures.
Yeah.
And what happened? US 10-year treasuries yielded 15%. What did that do? And what would it do this time around to a much more leveraged world? That's what causes rolling recessions, if not depression. So the moral of the story is don't be the last guy on the dance floor.
It's a good one.
So by the end of 2026, obviously, as we approach, we can narrow it down. But by the end of 2026, you don't want to be in the markets.
Of course not. So that means from here till probably sometime in mid of 2025. It's just that the election is a wild card. It really is. And like you said, they'll do anything to stop him from getting in office because he technically already won.
Yeah, but I don't think they can do enough to spur economic activity. I think that we have from now until the early months of next year a US recession.
Yeah.
And global.
So just expect a lot of volatility.
That's why with a new, well, maybe an existing government, but a new term of office, that's when everybody wakes up and we have to stop the recession and we throw, maybe by then Powell has resigned. I don't know.
Well, I know in America, they haven't officially reported to the masses that they have lowered interest rates. But if you look at the actions that are being done behind closed doors, it's almost as if they did. They just haven't announced it. Markets are reacting as if they lowered interest rates. And then other countries have. It's just the US hasn't shared it.
As I said before, I don't think it's greater odds than 50-50 that you see the Fed funds rate being cut in September.
Do you think artificial intelligence is weaponized AI against people? artificial intelligence, I think, is very dangerous.
I think
it's
A,
doing more
it's
damage.
dangerous. I think it's overblown. I think a lot of the companies in that sector are going to see big crashes. Just look at a chart of NVIDIA versus Cisco. I think there's some positive things from AI, but I think there are a lot of negatives.
Yeah.
The negatives obviously include companies using AI to cut their workforces.
Right. The
That's a
job market.
huge negative.
And that's accelerating, by the way.
Yeah, sure.
Mhm.
Sure.
Yeah. Makes it almost like they want to introduce a UBI, universal basic income, which has been widely discussed even by the Biden administration, interestingly. It's weird.
Well, I think wars stop it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's funny. I want to thank you for really teaching me back in 2022 where to look. And you really helped me learn a lot and even guided me through most of what I'm talking about today. So it has truly enhanced and greatly improved my understanding of how the world really works.
Well,
So
thank you very, very much. And thank you for having me on again.
absolutely.
Play the cycle, but don't stay there forever.
Agreed.
And prepare yourself for rolling recession, stroke depression from 2027 to about 2032.
Incredible. Well, Simon, it's been an absolute pleasure. And I thank you once again. And the audience will really appreciate this. So please take care of yourself and we'll stay in touch. If you
Thank
need
you,
any,
and thank you for having me.
absolutely. It was a pleasure. Okay. And thank you to the audience for getting this far. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Cheers then. Good luck to everybody.